Russia launches a deadly attack on the city of Lviv. 7 people were killed in the western city, which has become a haven for refugees and until now been largely spared. Good evening. Russia today launched a deadly attack on the city of Lviv ahead of what is expected to be a much larger offensive designed to grind down Ukraine's defences. This morning, missiles hit targets across the western city, killing at least 7. Until now, Lviv has largely escaped the worst of the bombardment and become a safe haven for Ukrainians fleeing elsewhere and a major hub for Western weapons flowing into the country. But it is to the east where many believe Russia is about to intensify its assault. From Kyiv, Peter Smith has the latest.
Russia bombarded Ukrainian cities this morning. Even Lviv, considered Ukraine's safe haven until now. Ukraine has confirmed 4 rocket attacks hit the city. Lviv's mayor says at least 7 have been killed, 11 are wounded, including 1 child. 3-year-old Artem was in a hotel for refugees here. With his mum, they fled to Lviv to escape the war in their home city of Kharkiv. But Putin's missiles found the little boy here too. The window smashed, his mother says. A piece of glass just cut through his fingers. ITV News understands military targets have been hit, but this was a tyre-fitting car garage. Russians, what have you done? This woman asks.
The number of killed and injured we have might not be final. Attacking that car garage was a barbaric act. It was entirely civilian. People who went to work this morning. Unfortunately, this is a tragedy.
Lviv is Ukraine's westernmost city, just 40 miles from the EU and NATO territory. Today's attack is a deadly warning about Russia's reach as this invasion escalates.
We mourn the dead, and we must be as vigilant as possible, because it seems like the enemy is getting wilder, and the number of hits on civilians will increase. We can see it already in our cities in the east of our country.
This is what he means. An even more intense attack has been unleashed on cities like Kharkiv. This woman had to be pulled away from her father's body. He was killed in the street.
Evacuate to where? They are hitting the whole of Ukraine. You see, they hit Lviv and Dnipro today, everywhere.
Those injured from the east are being taken to hospital in Dnipro. They're seeing more and more civilians coming in here with burn injuries. Meanwhile, Putin's troops close in on Mariupol. The mayor of this port city says at least 20,000 have been killed. Terror and devastation are reaching every part of Ukraine.
And Peter is in Kyiv tonight. Peter, how much of a shock will this have been for the people of Lviv?
Well, we know that Lviv has been targeted by Russia before, but this is the biggest loss of civilian life in Lviv since the war began. It was, as we said, a safe haven for many Ukrainians fleeing the war in the east. They believed this was a place where they could go to for shelter and remain in their country, their own country, without having to go into Poland next door. Lviv has hosted more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees from other parts of the country since the war began. So that is obviously a shock to many of the people who believed that they did have safe haven there. But we also know that Lviv has been used by the West as a route to direct weapons into Ukraine. This is the preferred route to get weapons into President Zelensky's troops' hands with the rail network that reaches all parts of Ukraine. So we know that this is a symbolic attack. The last time that Lviv was hit was when President Biden was visiting Warsaw next door, so President Putin has previous for these symbolic attacks, and it's to send a message to the West, also sending a message to Ukrainians that no part of their national soil will escape Russia's reach. But also I'd just like to update, we heard about 3-year-old Artem in our report. His condition tonight is now stable, but 3 others in Lviv remain in intensive care.
Peter Smith, thank you very much. 2 British fighters have been paraded on state TV in Russia after being captured in the southern city of Mariupol. Sean Pinner and Aidan Aslin were fighting alongside Ukrainian troops. Our correspondent Carl Dinnan is in Moscow for us now. Carl, can you tell us what happened?
Well, Sean Pinner and Aidan Aslin both settled in Ukraine about 4 years ago. According to their families, the two men have made it their home. They both joined the Ukrainian Marines and seem to have been captured in the fighting around Mariupol. We have a photograph of the two men before their capture. Sean Pinner on the left is a former British soldier from Watford. Aidan Aslin is a former care worker from Newark in Nottinghamshire. What's happened today is that state television here in Russia has started running videos of the two men. We're not showing those because it's not clear whether they're acting under duress or not. In those videos, the men are played a message from the wife of a pro-Kremlin Ukrainian politician called Viktor Medvedchuk. In that message, she calls on the Ukrainians to swap Mr. Medvedchuk for the two British men in a prisoner exchange. The two men are asked whether they agree with that. They say they do, and then both of them make pleas to Boris Johnson to facilitate that prisoner exchange. Now, it's not clear at all whether that's even possible and whether Boris Johnson has any influence over such a thing, but the Foreign Office has said that it's in touch with the two men's families and that it deplores the use of prisoners of war for political purposes.
A Ukrainian refugee says she feels safe and happy after moving in with a couple from Surrey. Fighting forced Sofia Klimina to flee her home in a suburb of Kyiv and head to Poland. Neil Baker and Helen Hayes from Camberley are some of the first people in the county to welcome a refugee into their homes. They're calling for the government to speed up the visa process so more people can be brought to safety.
There are so many people
that need to
go. And our neighbours are taking in a mother and a child, and they've been waiting 3 weeks. Nothing.
Just so frustrating.
People want to help, but they can't. Whereas ours took 8 days. I think we were lucky, really lucky.